Part of my research involves overthinking really fundamental parts of comic books, particularly superhero comic books. This means making spreadsheets, taking notes, collecting an insane amount of data, and rereading Crisis on Infinite Earths, 0 Hour, Infinite Crisis, and Final Crisis over and over again for the past 5 years. But hey, there's a doctorate at the end of it. I guess that's worth it. My research has already taught me a lot about how motion lines have changed over time, but on writing my current chapter, I read something that just made me stop and think about an element I hadn't considered before. To dramatically sum up 5 years worth of research, many elements within comics are connected to the flow of time. Comics are a unique medium because as soon as you film something, act it out, or add an animation to something, you actively give it a property of time. With comics, it's up to the art and elements within the comics to communicate how time is progressing. The most obvious example is what we call carriers. So speech balloons, thought bubbles, captions, things like that. Not all carriers are built the same. Speech balloons, including shouting and whispering, progress time due to learned experience. We can approximate how long something takes to say based on how long we take to say something. With thought bubbles, we know that time's passing, but it's less measurable given we can't time our thoughts. The big thing I want to discuss for a minute is captions. If you follow Neil Cohen's research, then captions do not hold any weight in time, as they're fully intended for the reader. They have no effect on the story world, so are disconnected from the passage of time. However, my research actually shows that as our real-world time has progressed, so from 1938 to now, how creators use captions has actually changed. Captions have grown from being initially only used for the reader, to the 80s using them to show a character's narration, to current day where character narration is the norm. On the surface, this basically means that captions begin as something that were not connected to time. Around the 80s is where narration starts to come in, primarily through thought, which has a nebulous connection to time, and finally we now have a mixture of thought and speech being used in narrative captions, which have a direct connection to time. Fairly straightforward, fairly cut and dry. In the case of my research, that's good enough for a chapter. And then I took a break. While resting, I started reading the re-release of The Origins of Marvel Comics. It's a 2024 hardcover re-release of the very first Marvel collected book from 1974. The re-release has a few articles in there relating to the history of the book and the republication of it. In a piece by Chris Rail, he discusses the unique natures of comics. Rail discusses how one of the most charming aspects of comics is the ability to convey in a few words all the necessary information a reader may need. Notably, he points out the editorial captions. This is what I would consider non-time dependent captions that are intended for a reader. However, something Rail says made me pause. Quote, "Without those editorial reminders that there was much more going on than any one comic, every issue of Amazing Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four would only exist in its own space. Readers wouldn't have to know what they were missing. But as soon as readers can be notified via an editorial caption that a character was last seen in so-and-so prior issue, the issue becomes merely a part of a much larger whole." This small comment really did make me pause. Having spent years looking at captions from a specific standpoint, I hadn't considered something important to a larger discussion. When we talk about time in comics, we measure it in 4 different ways, 3 of which come from the work of Douglas Wolk, with the 4th partly taken from Neil Cohen's work. 1. The chronology of publication, the literal order that comics are published. 1989 is before 1990, March comes before April, etc. 2. The chronology of events within a story. A happens, then B, then C within a comic. 3. The chronology of which you read a story, your own personal experience of reading comics in whatever order you happen to read them. 4. The chronology of time passing through the act of reading, the panel-to-panel, moment-to-moment act of reading and experiencing time passing. When we look at individual elements of a comic book, we need to look at them as part of that 4th category. No matter what the speech balloon says, it can't change when it's published. It can't change where it takes place in the story, and it can't change the order that you personally read it. Reading that comment from Rail, it got me thinking, are editorial captions one of the only parts of a traditional caption box we see even today? The only part of a comic's anatomy that's purpose is to point to the chronology of publication? Do I expect anyone who sees this to immediately respond, "Yes, you moron, why are you wasting your time?" Yeah, It is worth considering that this single holdover from the earliest days of comics has a different relationship to time than its modern-day counterparts. When looking at comics released this year, 2026, I don't see captions explaining what happens between panels. I don't see examples like, darting from Lois's side into a doorway, the young reporter gets rid of his outer clothes so swiftly that no eye would notice the movement, like in 1943's Action Comics number 64. We see these kinds of details conveyed in art, using semiotic imagery, lines, and clever paneling. But what we still see is the editorial captions, the CDCKO number 3, Paul K.A. Minsky, in the current big DC event. Side note, I'd love to interview Paul Kaminsky someday. Editorial captions are important. Unlike its counterparts, it connects to time not by expressing the passage of time, but by weaving together stories in the chronology of publication. A reminder on the page that a small issue is connected to a wider universe, that creators, artists, and writers are building upon each other's work, learning from the old work, and adding to it as they go along. It's a small detail, and if you think it's stupid, it is. I'm going crazy. I can't wait to graduate again.